Alrighty, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another live stream. I switched back to a different method that I've done before. So with the restream.io website, you can stream directly from the website itself onto YouTube and Twitch, or you can use a separate software like I'm using OBS and then pump the OBS into Restream and then have Restream go. So I was doing it off of the website the last few live streams, and I was like, oh, let me mess around, see if I can go back to OBS, add in some extra stuff, test out some things now I have some free time, see how it goes. And for whatever reason, when you connect it directly with the software here, it doesn't work. I have to copy and paste the links from Restream over onto here and connect to the server directly that way. So a little bit of a slower start. And then I was trying to figure out how to get the chats to work again. Let me see really quick if we can fix these. So let me see real quick if I go over to the YouTubes and copy the chat over, if it will play it in here like it's supposed to. There we go. And then let's see if it still works on this side too. Yeah, it looks like it's working on that one as well. So at least we have the YouTube chat on there. I don't know if it grabbed the Twitch chat correctly on this other app that I have, but we shall see. If you're over on Twitch, you can drop a comment and we'll see if it comes through, or if I need to try and connecting it again. Also, I can tell that I have if I switch over here real quick, you should see, I guess on that side, you should see a little number all the way down there, which means I have one person on Twitch watching me. So I know you're watching. And then I threw in some extra random stuff in there too. I don't know if it actually works, if you subscribe or if you follow or do whatever else, if it'll pop up or not. Let me check that looks like the YouTube chat is working. And then what we can do, as we've done in the last few live streams, we're doing form checks and then some Q&As, just throw it in there too, depending on whatever questions people have that they put in the chat. So if you have any questions, you can always throw it in there. And then if you ever want to be involved in the form check process, I always like to go through and show it. So let me go and pull up our Discord server real quick. So what you can do is you can go on Discord, whether you go through the browser or the phone app or download the computer app, and then you can make an account, and we have invite links. I have it down in the description below. Also, we have it on our Instagram accounts, and then we set up a extra layer of protection here. So you first have to come over to the welcome and rules section, read through the rules, hit the little thumbs up emoji, and then that'll give you the ability to become a member and come into the chats. So then you just go over here under form checks and more, and then you can see everyone's been throwing their form checks in there or asking about stuff like AMRAPs or RPEs. And if you go far enough up, you can see here is the last form check live stream I did, which was December 8th. So it's been a few weeks. So we're going to see how many of these that we can go through and kind of catch up. So let me go back up to the top so we kind of go in order as much as we can, though some people threw some new ones in there. And then let me bring up my browser real quick. Like I said, if you're over on Instagram and you go over to my profile and you click on the link right here, then one of these links on here you will see will be to join the Discord. So right here in the middle will be join Discord. So if after this live stream, whatever, you still want to join later on, you can do that. Also, you can go over to King of Lifts. I know he's not as famous as me or has as many followers as me, but you can still go to King of Lifts as well. And again, you go to the link, and then first one, Discord right there. You click on that, you can join our Discord server, read through the rules, hit the little thumbs up emoji, and then you can start chatting it up with us. So I'll close those, and then I guess we can get started with the actual form checks. Could even bring it in a little bit closer if you guys want. All right, so let's go and check out the first one. So Cindy had sent a couple of them. We'll start with this one from her actual meet, and then we'll go into the other one that she had thrown in there. And this time I did not do my homework. I did not check through the videos in advance to go look at issues and stuff like that like I've done previously. Oftentimes I write in the actual Discord server first in like text form what I'm thinking, and then I do a video going more in depth. So in these cases, it's just been too busy with meets, doing 3 meets in a row. Didn't get a chance to take a look. So we're looking at it for the first time right now. So let's go back and watch these squats one more time. I can even bring my microphone closer if you guys want. So that looks like a really good squat right there where she's struggling there. So not a whole lot of form breakdown here as far as the descent. So as far as like, you know, the top position looked good as far as what we can see from here. I don't know if I can make this better quality now. 720. Yeah, it's about as good as it's going to get. As far as the top position here, it looks good as far as the, you know, the stance width, the grip width. You know, you want to go as narrow as possible as feels comfortable for you. Get a nice tight upper back position where the bar is going to rest on there. Let me adjust my microphone real quick. That might be better. So that way it's not blocking my view. So, you know, really good position here as far as the grip width. And from what we can tell, a good low bar position. And from what we can tell, you know, the heels basically being right underneath the hips. And then the descent here, you know, breaking at the knees and the hips together. You know, getting down to depth. That then the only things that start breaking as she's coming up here, you just see the knees come in a little bit. And then you see kind of like a little bit of a tilt. So you can see this side, our right side's a little bit lower than our left side. And then potentially she starts shifting the hips to like kind of compensate for that. And then she starts evening out and coming up. It's not a big deal. I mean, everyone has sometimes either if like, you know, one rear delt is bigger than the other one, or if like one shoulder is tighter than the other one, maybe a little bit of a tilt. And also people when they're actually, you know, really trying to come up and really squeeze everything and push with all their muscles is you may have, you know, a little bit of shift to one side, a little bit of shift to the other side, depending if you lost your balance or depending if you're tighter on one side, you know, one leg might be more dominant or use it more. And so there's these little small little deviations that happen from time to time. Like everyone's not going to have, or pretty much no one's going to have a perfect squat. Like, you know, the knees don't come in at all. There's no hip shift. The bar is perfectly level. There's going to be these little deviations. So it's not that big of a deal, especially that it's not so much of a tilt that it's going to like mess her balance too much, and it's not going to like, you know, scare out the spotter into grabbing it early. The spotter was able to, you know, wait for it and let them continue to fight, and then she was able to come out this. So there isn't too much here from us watching this video to say, okay, this is the issue, this is what that the lifter should work on, because it could be a potential different number of things as far as, you know, tightness on one hip versus the other, or if it could just be the bar tilting that then caused the hips to shift to try and regain some balance. It could have just been a, you know, one-time thing. Let's go back and look at the other attempt real quick and see if that was better. So you can see here she comes out of the hole more level, a little bit of shifting to that side still, but no tilting. So there could be some issues as far as maybe some past injuries or maybe just some tightness on one side that's making one side more dominant and shifting to one side. And then potentially sometimes when the weight gets heavy enough, as you saw with the following attempt, then there may be some tilting of the bar as well. So maybe something that if they have access to, they can get someone to, test and see if one side is tighter than the other one, what muscles it is, and what they can work on, and maybe loosening things up, and then really focusing on keeping the balance on lighter weights and lighter sets. And then from there, there's some, things that other people do to, if you have someone to help you out, is that if you, push against it, like let's say your right knee is the one that comes in. So if you're pushing against the right knee, then your body naturally wants to fight against it and drive that right knee out. So that can help you to like think about it like, okay, this is what it feels like to drive that knee out and push against someone trying to push it in. So then when you go to squat, then you can kind of think about that same thing. Even though there's not someone's hand pushing your knee in, you can think about pushing the knee out and trying to counter that. So there's things like that that can be done. It just depends on whether you have access to someone to help you out or whether you want to like set up a band somehow to do it without a person, but then you have to figure out how to set up the band depending on what kind of setup you have, everything like that. Let's take a look at the bench and see if there's anything there. I mean, the bench looks really good as well. So far, it's looking even better than the squat. So if we go back here real quick and look at this first attempt, again, this is a really good position as far as a, wide grip here on the bench. Looks like they're fairly even on the bench. Nice big arch, pulling the chest up. Looks like the feet are pulled back. So again, really good starting position. And then a controlled descent here to touch lower on the chest. And then for the most part, keeping the elbows tucked underneath. It looks like maybe tucked a little bit more than is necessary, but overall pretty good. And, some people like being a little bit extra tucked in more than being flared out, which is a little bit more dangerous. So here, not a bad bottom position, good pause on the chest, and then pretty solid press up. Let's go back and watch it again. And this one is pretty even. There's a little bit of imbalance here as well. I don't know if it's the camera angle or not. But like when we look at it here, it looks like this elbow is pretty much locked out already, and this one is not. So there potentially could be some imbalances here even on the first, which then you can see more on the second attempt here, where getting a little bit slanted as well. And then again here, you can see she's pushing with our left side a little bit faster. And then again, it looks like it's locked out, and this one is not. And then the third one, she just straight up misses. And this one's even worse quality. It's hard to see what's going on, but interesting. What I would do here, maybe, if it was my lifter, is to start going through a series of questions and trying to maybe figure out what the issue is. So like, one of the questions would be like, did they have some kind of past injury on one side that's causing an imbalance for them to want to push more with the other side? Like maybe they had some kind of, rotator cuff tear, maybe they had some kind of pec tear, some kind of issue that their body had to go through a recovery process. And then when they come back, potentially one side may be more compromised or weaker, and so they try and use the other side more. So if it's something like that, if it's not, then maybe like saying, okay, has it always been an issue like this, or was it a recent thing? And maybe you're just like very, very tight on one side as far as the shoulder and the pec tie and everything like that, and then that's causing the elbows to tuck in at a different amount on the way down, and then pressing, differently as well on the way up. Another thing could be is, which we can't see as well because of the quality of this video, is to me it looks like she is even on the bench, but potentially she is not even on the bench, and the hair coming off on this side makes it difficult to tell how much of the shoulder's off compared to how much this shoulder's off. But you will see some people who are shifted over to one side on the bench, and that could be seen in a number of areas. You can look at their feet. So if you had some kind of top-down view, or even looking, down the barrel of the bench or whatever, you can see whether the feet are even, or if like one is forward of the other one, or one is wider than the other one, or one's pointing out more than the other one, and see if it is even or not. If it's not, how much of a difference is it? Is it a very minor difference, or is there some kind of extreme situation going on? And another point can be then the hips. So looking at the hips on the bench, sometimes it can help, again, to look from the top down and seeing whether the hips are even on the bench, or if they're shifted to one side, or maybe even like twisted. Then you go up the body and you look at the shoulders. Again, are the shoulders even on the bench, or are they shifted? Sometimes it's a small amount, but sometimes I've seen people where like one shoulder is completely on the bench, and then the other shoulder is like half or 3/4 is hanging off. So again, they're shifted on the bench. And so it's hard to tell here as far as kind of coming up from here on the bench, where does that hit on the shoulder joint? And then coming up here from the bench, where does that hit on the shoulder joint? Because we don't have as good of a quality video, and the angle looks like the video is kind of like, the video itself is tilted and filming a computer. And so potentially she could be shifted over to one side. And then that's causing some issues as far as the elbow position, and then as far as the pressing one side going before the other one. Also, it could be the angle, but you can kind of look at how much space is here, and then there's no space here. So potentially, if this was a good shot of the bench, then she is shifted over again with the hips and the feet to that side. So you might have to like delve deeper into this, or Cindy, you might have to throw stuff in the Discord chat for us as far as like, do you have any previous injuries that you're recovering from? Have you filmed from different angles to see if you're symmetric on the bench or not? Or it could just be, one side's much more dominant. A lot of people, when it does get difficult, will push more with their dominant side. So even for me, even if I do step evenly on the bench, or even if I'm doing a floor press, something like that, where your back is going to be completely on the floor anyways, is that when it gets difficult for me, my left side does lag a little bit sometimes. And so I will lock out my right and then my left. Very minor. So as if it's a little bit minor, then obviously it's not as big of a deal. And you can always use accessory work, like, if you're going to do tricep push down or something like that, you can do one arm at a time to try and build up, the weaker tricep. If you're doing like, shoulder press, you can do dumbbell shoulder press to see if one side lags and make sure you're not overdoing it with the dominant side, things like that. But it could potentially be some other issue going on there as far as being shifted over on the bench, and over time being shifted on the bench has changed the technique and changed what muscles want to do the work. And then you're getting this issue happen. And then let's see what we have as far as the deadlift. Deadlift looked pretty solid. Let's go back again. See what we can find. So doing more of a moderate sumo stance, not going too wide with the legs. The hips come up a little bit right there. And most likely, though we can't see it, most likely with that hips kind of shooting up, the bar drifted away, because it looks like, if I play it again, it looks like right here, the bar is touching the socks. And then as the knees kind of come in a little bit and the hips go up, it looks like the bar swings forward a little bit. So potentially the bar is coming off of the shins as well and from the midfoot. And then she has to pull it back in right around there. But she's able to pull it back in and stick with it. And then usually if you have the bigger legs and you're not very well built for deadlift, the lockout gets a little bit difficult. The bar has to, like, you know, drag on the legs to get the hips through and the shoulders back. But she's able to pull it off. So I think Cindy also put in other videos in there, so we can take a look at those later. But as far as the starting position, it would be, you know, trying to focus on the good hip height, the correct starting position where you can maintain the hip height and not having the hips shoot up, because the issue with the hip shooting up is then it's throwing the bar forward, and throwing it in front of the midfoot makes it less effective. And so if we can find the correct starting position and then keep the hips in that position, keep that torso angle there, keep the bar on the shins and over the middle of the foot, then we can be a little bit more effective with our pull and our starting position. And then that will help us when it goes into the lockout, because we'll be in a better position going into lockout, spending less energy. And then as always with sumo is like trying to keep those knees out as well as much as possible, not letting them collapse in, because that sometimes when the knees collapse in can then hit the bar forward as well. So I was going to pull up another browser because I can see someone threw something in the chat, but for whatever reason, it's not showing up on here for me. So what we're going to try out is if I go to my video, let's see if I can see what it says and see if we can fix the issue. Give me 1 sec. I'm going to give it a shot. Or maybe he just doesn't like me. But I guess I'm not sure why it's not popping up, but we'll still answer the questions a little bit later. I want to knock out some of these form checks first, and I won't be able to, I guess, pull them up, but we can still answer them. So Flying Hippo 5000. I'll see if I can get to your question after I knock out a couple more of these, just so I can catch up on how far behind I am. And then let's take a look at what we have next. I think Noelle sent a few things. And then Chanel's my lifter, so I'll push her towards the end of the queue since I talk to her normally about her technique. Oh, here we go. Cindy said, ignore my previous form checks as well. So both Cindy and Noelle sent some new stuff. So let's take a look at Cindy's new stuff, even though we judged her old stuff. So these are a little bit lighter squats, but technique is looking better. So if we go back to this first one here, again, good starting position, good grip width, good bar position, descent is fine. And then in this case, you can see on the way up too, There's no major issues here as far as like, the knees collapsing in, the hips shifting to one side, the bar tilting. It's a lot more balanced here. So the knees stay out here well. The hips look pretty even, and then the bar looks pretty even. So this right here looks really solid. If you can maintain this kind of technique as the RPs get higher and as the weight gets higher. So here as well from the side position, you can see again, really good position here. Feet stay flat on the ground, getting below parallel. Torso is in a good position. Elbows are in a good position. And then as we're coming out of the hole, decent job of keeping the knees forward and the torso angle the same and the elbows the same. And there's no major tilting action going on here. So this looks much better than the max, but obviously this is lighter weights and lower RPEs. So you have to just see whether you can maintain this kind of technique with the heavier weights, and then you'll be set. So let's take a look at the bench next. So these angles don't help us too much for what we're trying to look for bench either. As far as being able, like this one, we can't see both sides to see, how she is set up on the bench and then seeing the elbow position throughout the press. But as far as a starting position, again, from this side, this is a really good starting position. And then good bottom position here. The only thing I would say with this is a little bit rushing the reps. So you want to take your time, even if it is more reps, taking your time at the top. Once you lock out, make sure you reset, get everything tight, drive your legs again, get a new breath of air if you need to, then go down. When you start blending the reps, then it gets a little bit sloppy. And so you can see that the position is changing a little bit as far as like, the descent, the bar path, and then the touch point. So here, the first rep looks good. Then she presses and starts coming back down again. You can see the body shift a little bit to away from us, so to her left side. So most likely the bar tipped a little bit, just possibly from rushing the reps. So you want to make sure you take your time. And then on that last rep, it looked a little bit better as far as the stability and the touch point. So it was like the first rep was good, got a little sloppy in the middle, and got better again at the end. But if you just take your time, reset the top, make sure you're in a good position, and then do the following rep, then that should help out. Especially this isn't too many reps. It's not like you're doing, sets of 8 or 10 or anything like that. So then let's go to this angle. So with this angle too, we can't really see as far as the other shoulder, the other elbow. At least we can see the wrist and the bar. We can't really see the feet here either, whether it's symmetrical or not. So again, not the best angle for the issues that we're trying to look for, but let's take a look anyways. So again, this is just, a little bit sloppy as far as just trying to knock out all the reps rather than taking the time and doing each rep as its own distinct rep, like its own little single where you're resetting at the top, making sure you're getting back into a good starting position. And then you can see as far as the bar, is a little bit uneven on some of the reps. So like this one right here, it looks like it's a little bit tilted. This side's going down more. And then again, you can see how close this is to the safety, and that's a little bit farther away. Again, a little bit tilted, potentially from just rushing the reps a little bit. So I would say again, for the bench, for taking your time between the reps, and then potentially if you can get a view Let me show you the potentially good views. So if you can get a view from the overhead looking down, then from there you're able to see how much each elbow is tucked, whether you're touching evenly on the chest or whether it's tilted. You may be able to also see, depending on how much how high you go up and what kind of view you have, how the hips look and how the feet look. Other option is to, look down the bench or look up the bench. So if you did a view like this towards the top of your head, or a view like this towards the end of this bench, then depending on where you have the camera, again, you can see whether the feet are even or not. And also from this end, you could see whether the shoulders are hanging off an even amount, whether the elbows are tucking an even amount, if they're flaring out an even amount. So these views could help to be able to see differences from left to right, whether it's the shoulder, the elbow, the hips, or the feet, and see if there's any kind of issues there that could be fixed. Going into the deadlift here. Let's watch those again. So with the deadlift, again, I'm really big on, one, the starting position, and two, getting into some range or area of a neutral spine. Whether it's a little bit extended or a little bit rounded, it's fine, but somewhere around a neutral spine, and then trying to maintain that. So that kind of goes hand in hand with the starting position, because you want to get in a good starting position where you're not changing your position as the bar is breaking the ground, as far as you don't want the hips to go up and the shoulders to drop, or you don't want the back to round. So if we kind of go back a little bit on this one. So here, as she starts to initiate the pull, again, you can see right there how the hips went up, the knees shifted back, and the torso tipped over. We can even go quarter speed. So right there, you can see hips shoot up, knees shoot back. And not only do the knees shoot back, but also the shin angle is changing. So she has a decent forward shin angle, and then as everything is shifting back, it comes to a more vertical. So potentially, if the bar was here with the shin forward and then the shin goes vertical, then that's why you're getting the bar separating away from the shins. And so with a sumo deadlift, I know this isn't a max stance, sumo stance with the knees really out and a vertical shin, everything like that. But even with a moderate stance, you're going to be somewhere around a vertical shin, maybe just slightly knees forward. And so here, potentially, she is sitting down too much and having the knees too forward and pushing the bar too far forward. And then once it's heavy enough weight, what happens is the hips come up, the knees and the shins shift back, the bar sweeps back into the middle of the foot, and then here, the bar starts to come up. So I guess I can maybe connect this a little bit to what Flying Hippo 5000 said, as far as how do you determine the most efficient width for your stance in sumo. I do not have an exact answer for that, of saying, okay, here's your step-by-step guide to determining the most efficient width, and then you run this calculation, and then you mark on the ground with chalk, and that is your stance. It's going to take some trial and error. And so what I would say, the way I'm connecting it to this, is that if we look at the position here of when the bar starts to break the ground, right around there. Okay, I would say this is probably not the most efficient looking starting position for a deadlift. Now, the bar is over the middle of the foot, the bar is touching the shins, the shoulder blades are over the bar, the hips are higher than the knees, even the shoulders are still a little bit higher than the hips. The lower back is fairly neutral, a little bit rounded going into mid and upper back, but the hips are pretty high, the legs are pretty straight, and it's going to be hard to use, quads coming off the ground here. So I would say, okay, maybe this isn't the most efficient width for her sumo stance. Do I know the most efficient sumo stance width for her right after looking at it? No, but maybe this isn't. Part of the reason is she may have too much of a difficulty driving the knees out to the sides. So if this knee was coming towards us and that knee was going away from us, okay, is what we want. So maybe she has trouble keeping those knees out. And the benefit of having those knees going out to the sides and maintaining it there is you're getting the legs a little bit out of the way, and then you can get the hips closer to the bar. So this distance, I can draw that again. So if we have the bar right here, and then we have the hips somewhere around there, is we're looking at this distance right here. Okay, and that distance is far because the knees are collapsing in and then the hip is shooting up and moving away. Now, if we can get the knees out to the sides more, then you're able to get the hips closer more, and then the hips are going to be closer to the bar. It's going to be more efficient. Also, if the hips are closer to the bar, let's say you're able to get the hips here instead, is then you're going to have the hips be a little bit lower and the torso be a little bit more upright. So you would look like that. So potentially with this stance, if she has an inability to drive the knees out and keep the knees out in order to have the lower hip position, the more upright torso, and the hips being closer to the bar and the horizontal distance, then potentially this isn't the most efficient position for her, and maybe she should test out some other positions. Maybe she can go a little bit wider and then be able to get the knees out. It looks like not going to be able to go any closer based on the other video from her competition, so maybe she would have to try going out a little bit wider over time, seeing if she can drive the knees out and get into a better starting position as far as hips closer in the horizontal distance and more upright torso, hips not shooting up, those kinds of things. If she's not able to, another possible solution is, okay, well, what about conventional? Has she tried out conventional before? What were the issues there? Could she try out conventional again, maybe do better this time compared to whatever issues potentially she had last time? And then potentially there could be, I guess there could be a best case scenario, but no very effective or efficient way is potentially, with this narrow of a stance, then the knees collapse in and the hips shoot up. Maybe with a wider stance, she has some kind of past injuries, wherever like that, where it causes pain and it won't work. And potentially with a conventional stance, maybe again, she has some issues as far as back injuries, wherever like that, where it's not going to work. And then basically none of them are really a good option. And you have to kind of just pick one, hope you have the least amount of injury with it. You can train it with the most amount of volume. You feel most comfortable with it, and just pull whatever you can. So there's different things there that could be tested out to figure out what's the most efficient stance for you, rather than there's no way that I know of where you can just, measure something or look at someone or, figure out what would be the best for them. People will have to kind of start with a moderate range for their sumo stance and then try out different stances from there. Oftentimes it's like going out a little bit wider and wider over time and seeing with a wider stance, you can keep the hips in position, not having the hips tuck under you and not having the knees come in. So I thought I was gonna sneeze for a second. So one of the issues people have when you go to a wider stance is that their hips, and I'm not an artist here, will kind of tuck under them like that, and that'll also cause the spine to tuck under them too. So instead of it looking like that, then their spine will start rounding like that, and then also their hips will tuck under them as well. And so you have this movement of the hips tucking under to get closer to the bar with a wider stance, because people just maybe don't have the strength for that position. And so they're trying to compensate for that position. Or maybe if they're just not a, not a tall enough person, or they don't have the limb lengths for it, it's just too wide of a stance for them. And so that's another thing to be careful of, is you may want to test out going wider and wider. But if you have issues like that where it gets heavier, where you're getting the hips tucking underneath you, then you may need to pull back a little bit, bring the stance back in, and get into a position where you can maintain the hips in position as you initiate the pull. Some people do like to try and then go more narrower and narrower. Personally, I feel like maybe a few people will work for, but I'm not necessarily a fan of it. Like if you have to go that narrow, maybe you should go back to trying conventional and seeing if you can make conventional work. The whole point of sumo, or one of the main points for sumo, is to try and go wider and artificially shorten your height. And now your arms are going to be longer compared to your height. And also you can drive your knees out to the sides, artificially shorten your legs, and be able to get in a more efficient position. And then the other point, obviously, for those people who compete equipped, is to try and get a little bit more out of the suit. But that's a different story. Let's see what else we got. Of course, we got Pete asking me, does it matter if you train deadlift on uncalibrated plates? And the answer is, of course. I mean, you can make an argument that it matters if you train on uncalibrated plates on all three lifts. But if you probably had to rank them, maybe deadlifts would be the highest, then the squat, and then bench would probably be the lowest, because bench probably has the least amount of effect, as far as it doesn't change your starting position. It doesn't change any kind of bounce or momentum that you may be getting out of it. It would just be the fact that the weight may be less than what you actually think. For deadlift, it probably has the most amount of effect out of it. One, being that the weight is incorrect. And two, kind of going with the uncalibrated plates. It depends on whether you're talking about like uncalibrated steel plates versus calibrated steel plates, where the thickness is the same and everything else is the same and the height is the same, or for starting to add in those other variables, because sometimes there'll be also bumper plates versus steel plates. So bumper plates is going to make it a little bit different, and sometimes it's going to be plates that are not the correct diameter versus plates that are the correct diameter. So it depends if you're going to kind of combine all those things. The diameter obviously changes the starting position. The bottom plates obviously change the amount of bend on the bar. Uncalibrated weights also can make it lighter or heavier. And most likely you're going to have a heavier max on deadlift compared to the rest of them. So you may be loading more 45-pound plates. And if more of them are off, then it could affect it. So if you got a 225-pound bench press, you're putting on 4 45-pound plates. If they're all off a pound or two, you're off 4 to 8 pounds. But if you have 500-pound deadlift, 600-pound deadlift, and you're loading up 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 plates on each side, and they're all off 1 or 2 pounds, then potentially that can make it a bigger difference in the weight that you're doing. And as an example of some bad plates, I'll go up right here to my lifter, Chanel. So the LA Fitness that I trained, or used to train out over here, have the, whatever it is, 12-sided plates. But even some gyms like here, the one that Chanel has, it's like a little bit cut off on looks like 3 parts, where I guess it's the handle. So these aren't perfectly circular plates. And if you start with one of these flat edges on the ground, then your diameter's off a little bit, and it's going to mess up your starting position, and it's going to be more of a deficit. So for a while, with like our first macro cycle together, we just did it that way and just focused on technique and getting stronger and everything like that. Did well at the meet. Then the second macro cycle, obviously we're running off of bigger numbers. It's a little bit more difficult with the volume and everything, a little bit more challenging. And we figure, okay, let's put it on these weights to raise them up a little bit. May not be perfect as far as the starting position, but it's just like, would you rather go with a more of a deficit and then go into the competition and pull from a normal height, or would you potentially be a little bit of like a block pull and then go into competition and pull from a regular height? It's for her with the position she has to get in for a starting position, and it could be difficult on the back, is we've been going with this plates instead, because you can see from here the way she's built, it's a very high hip position, has to bend over a lot in order to bend down and grab the bar, and so going into a slight deficit makes that even more difficult, and so it could put more stress on the lower back and cause some more back rounding. So we've been going to these blocks to get them closer to the right height, or maybe if it is a little bit up above, it's not a big deal. So Pete, hopefully I answered your question. Also threw in some extra variables as far as bumper plates and also non-round plates. So let's see what we have next here that we can do. Let's do, I guess these, Noel says these are the most recent ones. So let's take a look at this one. Looks to be like a squat. Hopefully my computer can handle it. All these different browsers. Let's see. So pretty solid squat here. Let's go back as far as the setup and walkout. So let's go back one more time. So maybe a direct front view would be able to see it better, but potentially he could bring his feet in a little bit closer to have them directly underneath the hips and stand straight up. It looks like maybe he's a little bit out wider, but it's hard to tell. So potentially could bring this in a little bit more, but potentially it's fine. The other thing is he kind of goes up and out at the same time. So here, as we start to play it, he's got his feet back a little bit behind him, and so then he goes up and out to kind of clear the hook. So I would try and obviously break that down into separate steps. So potentially bringing the stance in a little bit and making sure the heels are directly underneath the bar so that you stand straight up, not up and back. So we go straight up, take a second, and then begin the 3-step process to walk back. So that you would have 1 there, 2 there, and then 3. So overall, as far as 3 steps is good. The other thing, some people like to walk pretty far back, and depending on what kind of rack you're in, may work out and may not. In this case, once he takes this first step back, he can kind of set up right there, because the difference will be, trying to squat somewhere around here, right over the base, or even a little bit further back, versus if you go too far back, either you're going to be outside the safeties, or in his case, he was really close. That's why I was trying to check, and I turn on the sound to see if he clipped or not, is being right over that little clip right there. And you want to be careful, because if you have the safeties high enough like he does, you may go down and hit that little piece and it'll mess you up. The other thing too is, depending on if this is bolted down or not, is if you fail over here, then you may cause the rack to flip over on you. But if you fail closer to here over the base, or even a little bit more forward, depending on how far forward you can go before you clip the bench hook, is then potentially it won't flip on you. It'll be closer to the center and it won't flip on you. And also, you can always just then kind of roll the bar forward. So just a little minor thing to be careful of in this rack. From there, we go into the actual squat. So here, really good descent, breaking the knees and the hips at the same time. Good torso angle, good elbow position, everything like that. Depth looks great, way below parallel. Knees do come in quite a bit there. Takes his time, resets between reps. So that's really from the actual squat, that's the only main thing. And potentially the knees coming in could be from just going down so deep. So as far down as he goes with the hips, potentially once he gets down there, he's losing a little bit tightness as far as in the tension in the hamstrings. Potentially the hips are tucking under a little bit, getting a little bit more relaxed in that bottom position. So then when he's trying to come up from that, relaxed position where he's lost some tension and stuff like that, then the knees are kind of like collapsing in, trying to regain some tension. Whereas if he went down and kind of like stopped parallel or just below parallel, kept tightness everywhere and came up, maybe they wouldn't collapse in as much. If they do still collapse in, or two, your goal is to go this deep, like you want to go, maximum range of motion, then it's not that big of a deal. You just focus on your feet, making sure you're driving into the ground, making sure you're pushing through the big toe, little toe, through the heel, maintaining your balance over your middle of your foot, thinking about driving your knees out, and then just doing your best. Like, it's not the end of the world if the knees are coming in like that, especially with lighter weights or at lower RPEs, they're not coming in. And then just once it gets more difficult, they come in. That's fine. But potentially you could change how far down you go and maintain tightness and then keep the knees out that way. But the other thing I would just fix is just improving little minor things with the setup, as far as like, getting the feet directly underneath the bar, standing straight up, then doing your 3-step walkout, and maybe just being careful not to walk too far back that you're going to hit the little clip on the safety, or you're going to walk out from the safeties completely. Let's go to this one right here. All right, let's take a look at the bench press. So really solid bench press as well. What's most common with you all submitting your stuff is that overall are really good, 80% plus as far as your setup and technique, just some minor things that maybe could be improved upon. But here, as far as the setup on the unrack, looks really good as far as, driving the shoulders and traps into the bench. In this case, he likes having his hips up, unracking and putting the hips down. That's perfectly fine. Good grip width here. Bars deep in the palms. Brings it out. Brings the hips down. Feet are in a good position. Takes his time, pulls the chest up, drives the legs. Nice controlled descent. Elbows are tucked underneath. Good, touching low on the chest. And then drives it back towards the head. Takes his time, resets. The only minor thing there was here, a little bit of readjusting the feet, the toes come up a little bit, and then the knee comes in a little bit. So, very little minor thing there is just moving the toes and moving the knee a little bit during the pause. But again, really solid, nothing really there to correct or anything like that. Potentially when weights get heavier, maybe there's some kind of issue. So if you want to send in another video when it gets heavier, you could do that. And then let's go to, I guess we can quickly take a look at the RPE as well, since he was asking for the squat if it was RPE 7.5. So let's pull the squat back up real quick, take a look at the RPE. Give me that 1080p. So I tend to be more conservative with my approach of calling RPs. I'd rather, something be a 7.5 and I call it an 8 and be on the safer side, rather than something being a 7.5 and I call it a 7 and now I'm on the wrong side of it as far as if you're gonna adjust the weight for the following set, or whether you're gonna use that to have an estimated max to run future training weeks, or if you're gonna use it to build some kind of game plan. So I'm always a little bit more conservative. So just seeing him for the first time, potentially he can be a slower lifter, but the reps didn't look too fast. And the second one with the knees coming in and being a little bit of a struggle, I might put it at a 8 or even 8.5. One way I try and think about it too is RP 8 should kind of be how an opener moves. And I want an opener to be, pretty smooth. I don't want it to be any kind of sticking points or any kind of major issues, because you should be able to do 2 more reps with it. So when I look at this second rep, the knees come in. It's a little bit slower than I would want if I just watched this as far as an opener. But potentially for him with the knees coming in, maybe he is always a little bit slower. So that's what I said. I would put on 8, maybe an 8.5. So that's what I'm saying. I'm a little bit more conservative, and I wouldn't go with the 7.5. Let's take a look at the bench. I lost it, so let's pull it back up again and take a look at the bench RPE again. So the bench second rep did look better to me than the squat. But again, I would be conservative. I would say that's an 8. That's how I would want my opener to be. I wouldn't want it to be any slower than that. So I would just call that an 8. Just because it was a little bit slow off the chest and then it sped up, one smooth motion. Might as well just call it an 8. Give me 1 second. I was just deleting a message I saw. It looks like it was spam. All right, let's take a look at the deadlift. And the deadlift, he says RPE 7.5 to 8. So again, really solid technique. You guys got to come send videos of people with bigger issues. So really good deadlift here, really taking his time with the sumo setup. Got a bit of a wider stance than what we saw previously. So they're pretty solid starting position. The bar goes forward a little bit on him. And the hips go a little bit forward on him. And then that one, he hits it forward a little bit more. So potentially, it could just be sitting, back on the heels a little bit too much here. So as he drops the hips really quick and tries to get the vertical shin there, potentially just shifting too much of his weight back and having his hips back. If we had a, side view, we might be able to see it better. And so what's happening is there, you can see the hips come up a little bit and then kind of shift forward there a little bit. If he was a little bit too far back, kind of getting his weight shifted back. So potentially that could be like where he should be trying to start from here, where the hips are just a little bit higher and the bar potentially is a little bit more with the midfoot and a little bit more balanced rather than trying to shift all the way back on the heels and the hips back. And then from there, it's just going straight up. So from there, you can see go straight up. As he gets to the knees, locks out the knees, brings the hips through, shoulders back, boom, no problem. On the second rep, tries to be a little more aggressive with the dropping the hips and pulling. And so that could potentially also just make it a little bit worse as far as moving the bar forward and the body forward, and maybe even more than the first rep and more than you want, because it's just the momentum's pushing them forward. So here, good job of resetting, but it's just a little bit too quick as far as dropping the hips and trying to go. And then you can see there how much it really quickly rolled on him. So if we go back a little bit, you can see that right there. So then if we play this again, and then if we try and go into a good starting position, again, somewhere right around there, rather than here really far back on the heels. And then again, as far as lockout, once it gets past the knees, no issues there. So potentially just something to look into there, is just a minor thing as far as, again, the starting position. Sitting the hips down too much, and then maybe having the weight too far back on the heels, maybe the toes even being up. And then the body compensates a little bit by kind of shifting the body's weight forward, shifting the bar forward, getting everything over the middle of the foot, getting the hips a little bit higher, and then coming up. And on the second rep, just you have to time everything right and do it to the right amount when you do that dynamic setup. So as soon as you drop the hips and try and pull, if anything is off, it throws you out of position. So you have to make sure, taking your time, dropping the hips, making sure you're in a good starting position. Again, having good balance in the feet, and then coming up. So one thing you may want to be mindful of with the sumo deadlift in your bottom position is making sure you're driving those toes into the ground. You don't want your toes up off the ground and your weight on your heels, and then you kind of shift back over and forward when you actually go initiate. You want to be trying to drive those toes down into the ground and keep that balance over the middle of your foot, and then having a little bit of a higher hip position, tension in those hamstrings. And then a very minor thing, you might not even be able to fix it too much, is the knees come in very little right there too. And so those knees coming in a little bit too could be hitting the bar forward. So with the correct starting position, driving the feet in the ground, having a little bit higher hips, potentially be able to keep those hips, those knees out rather than having them collapse in. But again, it's very small stuff there. And sometimes with the smaller stuff, it just takes a little bit more practice and things to think about every time you go to a session to do a rep or a multi-rep set, you have to just think about like feeling yourself in my balance. So one thing you can do, sometimes I have people do when they're standing up. You can be standing up, okay, and your feet are flat on the ground, but you could shift your weight forward and have your balance be forward, but your feet are on the ground and you're not falling over. And you can also be shifted back and have your weight more on your heels and be balanced as far as not falling over or anything like that. But you have to find that little middle ground, okay, where the weight is right over the middle of the foot and everything is a little bit more balanced. You're not about to fall forward or you're not about to fall backwards. So potentially something that you can just mess around with the sumo stance and get a feel of what it's like to be too far on the toes, get a feel of what's like to be too far back on the heels, and then find that right balance each time you do a rep. And then just being mindful of resetting at the top. So if you do have a bad rep where you shift forward, you can reset for the following rep and then getting that dynamic start right, or just going to more of a static start and just focus on getting the hips in the position you want while you're down in the bottom position rather than dropping and pulling. And then over time, you kind of figure out a better starting position and go from there. And I forgot the RP, so let's go back to RP real quick. Yeah, again, RP 8, maybe 8.5 just because of a little bit wobbly here at the bottom where the bar goes forward. But yeah, you can say an 8. So I would say, yeah, like, pretty much 8 across the board. Maybe the squat was 8.5 because that was the hardest one. And bench probably was the easiest one. The deadlift is just the technique with the bar going forward that makes it look a little bit more difficult. In general, though, my RPEs are, you can see, a little bit higher than you. So like, let's say 0.5 higher than you, just because I tend to be more conservative with my numbers and play it safe. Got my lifter mic right there too. Let me check the chat real quick, see if there's any other messages in there, and then we will continue on. Though my computer can barely handle any of this. Maybe time for an upgrade. Looks like no messages. Over on Twitch. Here's what my computer looks like real quick if you want to see. Oh, it's actually down to 80% right now. It was pushing 100% when I had the other browser open, I guess. Well, there we go. It's going down a little bit, down to 60%, 70%. But that may mean it's time for a new computer. I was looking into every once in a while, looking to see what kind of deals are out there. Get something that can handle these live streams a little bit better. Okay, at least it's chilling out a little bit more now. Let's see what else we have before I go into my lifters. Because we've done Critical J before. We've done Vaniori before. And Vaniori, I don't know if this one, I'm guessing this one's different. This one's probably a bench press, but it seems like it's not working. So you may need to fix the bench press one. Yeah, because it seems like it's not doing anything. So you may have to fix this one. But let's go back up real quick. And let's go back to my lifter Chanel's videos real quick just to go over a little bit more on deadlifts in the starting position. So for that one, you can see she did kind of like that dynamic start, dropping the hips and then going. But if we go forward a little bit and try and go to starting position, you can see how the hips come up a little bit, because with the dynamic start, she tries to sit down a little bit too much. Right there, you can see the hips kind of go up, shoulders come forward, back rounds a little bit, and then the bar breaks. But I just wanted to kind of go over this starting position right here. Like, a lot of people are afraid of this starting position. Everyone thinks like their hips should be super low, their torso should be super upright, they should be doing like a high bar squat, and that's just not the deadlift, especially the conventional deadlift, and it is a more of a hip hinge. So let's see if I can use my great drawing skills. A lot of people try and do something where instead of the hips being, let's actually undo that, and didn't undo. There we go. Instead of the hips being here, okay, they try and get their hips lower and torso more upright. And then the bar obviously is here. So they try and do something like that where it looks like more of a squat, or like a quarter squat here. And then that's where you get the hips kind of come up and the torso tips over. All right, and sometimes people have the knees too far forward, and then they're pushing the bar too far forward as far as in front of the midfoot. The other thing you get people try and do, which is similar to that, is sitting the hips way down. So maybe something more like that. And then they have to have the bar way forward of their foot, which is over here. So some people will try and do that as well. Like, you know, they have to sit all the way down into a squat, and they end up pushing the bar forward and actually making it worse. Because again, what happens is the bar sweeps back, hips shoot up, torso tips over and goes forward, and then the bar comes off the ground. And so they'll see sometimes a bar path too of like an L shape, rather than it just being the vertical line. So it's not anything bad to have this kind of position here, depending on how you're built. You know, Chanel has some longer legs here, so the hips end up being higher. She doesn't necessarily have super long arms to lock out like down by the kneecaps, and so she has to bend over more to actually reach down and grab the bar. If she had some longer arms, then she wouldn't have to reach down as far to grab the bar. But if we look at the lockout, you can see the lockout here is a little bit more in the upper to mid thigh, not all the way down at the knees. It's not all the way down. It'd be nice right there to have a lockout right around there. So she has to, again, bend down more. So you have to be mindful to not overdo how far you sit down. So right there, you can see she sat down a little bit too much, and she bumped the bar a little bit forward. It just didn't bump too much because it's on these plates, whether if it was on the ground, may have rolled a little bit forward more. And so then the compensation is right there. That to that. Another way you can look at it too, there's different ways you can look at, you know, whether the person is in a good position or not, is sometimes you can just look at the arm and see how vertical this arm is, and then you know that she's sitting too far back, because you actually want a slight angle of the arm from the shoulder joint down to the hand. So if I play this again and go forward a little bit, you can see now you're getting this slight angle back. So that's another way you can see it. So here, you got a little bit too much of a vertical arm. And here, you got a better position as far as the slight angle back. So those are just some issues that a lot of lifters have, is their deadlift starting position. A lot of times they'll have, the hips shoot up, torso tip over, the lower back round, the hips tuck underneath them, something like that. And oftentimes it's just being in a incorrect starting position. They're trying to sit too far down with their hips, they're trying to sit too far back with their hips, trying to sit their shoulders too far back, trying to start too vertical, and that's just not the correct starting position for them. And then connected to that sometimes is just the tightness. If someone's trying to like yank the bar rather than getting as tight as possible, pulling the slack out of the bar, then when you try and yank a heavy enough weight, then 2 times your body weight, 3 times your body weight, whatever it is going to pull you out of position. So sometimes you get the combination of that. So let me go over to, I was trying to see if Mike had a deadlift video. Let's take a look at what this deadlift video looks like. Oh, that was too easy. So that was really good, but you can see, as far as the stance switch for a conventional, nice and narrow, slight little angle with the toes, which is fine for people that feel comfortable that way. And then you can see how right there, he's trying to pull the tension out of the bar. Okay, so getting a little bit of tightness. So here, he's a little bit more relaxed and the bar is more relaxed. And then here, trying to pull that slack out of the bar and get tension between him and the bar. So now when he goes to pull, there's no more change in position of this bar, or very little, versus if the bar is relaxed, then at first you're losing as far as your position and your energy in the changing of the position of the bar, because then the bar has to start bending and then eventually the weights come off the ground. So here he pulls that out first, then he sits down, gets into the position that he wants to get in, and then he goes. Obviously, there's a light enough weight for him. And obviously, you always want to get more and more tension out of the bar, especially with a deadlift bar. You want to try and bend it more and more. So you can see it bends a little bit more as he goes to pull right there. So potentially he can even get more tension in that bar and try and get to that position right there. And for some people, they'll notice if they really try and wedge themselves in and really try and pull this tension out, is with a light enough weight, like let's say you're warming up at 135 or 225 or maybe 315 pounds, is as you wedge yourself in and get tight and pull that slack out, the bar will kind of pop off the ground, because the amount of force you're putting in to wedge yourself in there and pull the slack out of the bar is more than what's needed to break the bar off the weights off the ground. And so the bar starts coming up and you already start kind of the pull. But then with a heavy enough weight, obviously the weight's going to stay down, because the amount of force you're producing is not enough to lift 405 or 495 pounds, whatever it is. But here you can see, even though he doesn't pull as much slack out of the way as possible, he does a good job right there of maintaining that position as the bar breaks the ground. So a little bit of the hips going up right there, but overall, you can see everything kind of coming up together. And obviously there's a light enough weight for him, so easy lockout, everything like that there. But that's kind of what you want to be trying to go for, especially if you're using a deadlift bar. You want to try and pull that slack out. Michael, RPE 0. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you're hitting, 0.43 meters per second, depending on the person, obviously, and they're, what they're efficient at on deadlift. You could be doing less than 0.2, sometimes less than 0.15. So you are going pretty quick there as far as a deadlift rep. Trying to see what else we can do, or if we call it a day, since it's been over an hour. Usually I try and keep these around an hour. It took me a little time to figure things out as far as starting, So let me check and see which ones we haven't done. So we could do Critical J and Vaniori, I believe, is in here too next time. And hopefully we can get the right video here from Vaniori. So I think we can do that. We'll take a look at Mike threw in a heavier set. Let's take a look at that real quick just to compare. See if we can get these velocities a little bit slower. So overall, that was solid as well. Again, so on these, it does start pulling the slack out a little bit less. So a little bit there, and then goes, but not too bad. So even on this one's really solid. You just want to make sure you don't get too sloppy when you're doing the reps of, like, pulling the slack out less and less and trying to yank the bar more and more. You can see on this one, like, being careful of the arm being bent and then trying to yank the bar all of a sudden, like, trying to pull basically this distance out and trying to yank it with the shoulders. So as I go forward here, you can see how it starts straightening out. So you want to be careful of having it bent and relaxed and then trying to go from, like, 0 to 60, kind of like just yanking it all of a sudden to yank the bar off the ground, and that's what's causing to straighten out your arm. You want to straighten out the arm and already have tension and then initiate the pull. So you just want to be careful as you're doing, more reps in the set and it's getting more difficult, that you're not getting too sloppy and pulling the slack out less and less, having less and less tension before you initiate the pull, and yanking it a little bit more and more. Let's take a look at this one real quick too. So that one a little bit too, as far as here, a little bit of the slack pulled out, a little bit of elbow bend, and then initiates. But again, overall pretty solid. You just want to be consistent with the technique. So, like I said, I think maybe I'll call it there and save the rest for the next one, since I don't really have anything going on for the rest of December, and I'm hoping to go to no meets in January. Then potentially I can do another stream soon. Maybe I'll do one. Wednesday today? Maybe I'll do one tomorrow or Friday if I'm bored and got nothing else to do, or just wait until New Year and do one, next week again on Wednesday or Thursday, so we can knock out the other ones that are on there and any new ones people add in there. If I have free time, tomorrow, and I'm not gonna do a live stream, I can always just go in there, take a look at the videos, give some feedback in the chat instead of doing a whole live stream. And I think that covers it, since we don't really have any questions. The last thing I guess we can just do is what we've been doing also on the last few streams to finish it up, is let's take a look at how much money has been raised. Looks like they're getting pretty close. So if you've been on the last few streams, you saw I was talking about this Team C's. They're trying to collect $30 million to remove 30 million pounds of trash from the oceans by January 1st. And if we include today, we got what, 3 days left, and they're up to 25 million. So we'll see if they make it. Most recent, these nuts. So, it's still coming in a lot per day. So we'll see if they, let's see who has the most trash. Anonymous. So you can see lots of people donating Patreon, YouTube. Dogs of Elon. Mr. Beast, Mark Rober. And then if we go to top teams, let's see what we got on there. We're not a top team, but we are also on here too. Let's see what we're up to here. See if any of you guys have donated. So we're up to our 80 pounds. These 3 that I did for the 3 live streams, and then my own lifter here, Thomas, helped me out. Did it back on November 4th. So I'm going to do another 20 pounds, I guess, to get us to 100 pounds, just in case we don't do another live stream by their January 1st deadline. So let's do another 20 pounds here. And I always forget how I filled out this form the previous time, but we'll just do the same thing for both. There we go. There's our team. I guess I'll switch this then too. Let's see how that'll come out. Don't want any of that. And now I gotta switch it off the stream. Make sure Mike doesn't steal my credit card information. So then he's paying for he pays for our coaching with my own credit card. Sneaky little Mike. Confirm. Complete. I gotta put in zip code. Complete. Boom. We did another $20. And now I guess let's see if it pops up right away or not. Yeah, there it is. So now we are up to $100 donated from our live streams, or 100 pounds of trash removed from the ocean. So thank you all, as usual, for hopping on these live streams, hanging out with me, sending in your questions, submitting your videos. Again, you can go to our Discord. Again, if you're on YouTube, you can go down to the description below and there's a direct link to it. Or if you want to look at later, you go to Instagram, check out my Instagram, or you can check out the King of Lifts Instagram, who has way less followers than I do. No one even knows who King of Lifts is, but you can go over to his as well. I was just going to pull up the YouTube's real quick because I think it's hard for me to read the I was looking at Mike's comments. It's hard for me to read it on the actual streaming. You can buy a car with my credit card. There's not enough. There's not enough credit on my credit card. The limit's too low. You have to buy a junk car if you get the information. But I guess we will end it there. Again, thank you all for coming to live stream. Thank you all for going on our Discord, submitting your form check videos in there and asking your questions here on the live stream. I'm testing out things each different live stream to see what works and what doesn't work, and I have to work on it. And I'm hoping, like, you know, all my testing will be done this year, and then next year maybe I can do some things a little bit more formal, maybe get a better computer, do things a little better quality, and maybe we'll get some more viewers on the live stream as well. So again, thank you all for coming and supporting me. Hope you guys are having happy holidays. Hope you guys have a happy New Year's. Stay safe out there, and I'll catch you in the next live stream, maybe tomorrow. We'll see. All right, see you guys.